Welcome to NREI's Common Area Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the award-winning editorial staff at nreionline.com. Let's jump right into this week's podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Common Area with your host, David Bodamer. I just thought about this, David. Our title's very interesting these days. The Common Area, I believe, refers to an area where everybody gathers together.
That is very, very good observation.
Okay, so hang on. Time out, David. We're going to do this over again, right? I mean, we're going to keep this recording, but hello and welcome to the Uncommon Area with your host, David Bodamer, because I think that's the territory we're in right now.
Yeah.
We're all working from home.
Right. Yes, we are bringing the common area. The uncommon area is actually, we are in uncommon times. We are in an uncommon situation. And you're very, that's right. We start, the name of this podcast was about the places in the buildings where people come together and socialize and are in groups. And that's exactly what we're not supposed to be doing right now. So the podcast name is not good advice.
well, for now we're gonna change it to the Uncommon Area until we come back together. But we're learning some very valuable lessons, David. I want to share one with you right now. So working from home, I found out that I have a bull mastiff, and he can't be in the same room with me when I'm working because number one, when he sleeps, he snores, and so that will really screw up some recording time, right? That's number one. Yeah. But number two, his breath is terrible, and I haven't noticed it as much now that I'm in an enclosed space with him, or I was until I banished him to a different room in the house. But good gravy, that dog, he needs a mint. So those are some of the life lessons I'm learning from this, not to make light of the coronavirus and people that are actually suffering or sick or have family members that are sick, but it is a different world that we're living in, and it's affecting everything. So it'll be a great conversation today about that.
Yeah, and I'm in my home in Brooklyn. We have a New York apartment, so it's, those are like, and it's my wife and I both working from home, and we have our two cats, and one of whom really likes to play fetch. So a bit of a disruption when I'm just hoping he doesn't kind of come up during the podcast and ask for that. He's currently napping, so I think we should be okay.
We should be good. I got to ask you this question because I actually heard this on the news. It was yesterday, in fact. Somebody said that New Yorkers weren't actually aware of how loud construction is because they're at work normally, and now that they're working from home, they're like, "Wow, it is really loud here during the day in the different parts of the city." How's your area? Are you experiencing any of that construction noise, or we?
I guess quiet? I've been lucky. There's no jackhammers going around us right now.
All right, good deal.
Yeah, you'll hear if they are. We've got the window open.
Oh yeah, definitely. All right,
it's true. Yeah, it is true.
So your wife's working from home as well, then?
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
So we're both here. We've got our own kind of WeWork situation happening.
Perfect example. Yeah, my wife starts working from home tomorrow, so that's another thing that we're going to be dealing with, and I do a lot of recording during the day, and one interesting comment that where my office is set up currently is there's a major pipe running right next to my desk, so any showers, laundry, or flushing of toilets upstairs from the other two levels, that'll come right down and sound like a waterfall next to me. So again, things to avoid while recording. Yeah. Well, we'll all make adjustments, I suppose, and we'll make it through this. But will the markets? That's one of my questions for you. I know that we're not going to be talking about the stock market necessarily, but I'd love to pick your brain on the real estate market and or just real estate investments in general, right? I mean, this is tough. I read something that you sent me earlier about the things that I don't think about, David. I mean, first they could fill a room, but the things I don't think about when it comes to real estate is all the convention centers losing money because of everything being canceled for months. Like you and I were talking earlier, my church is now, we've been online for years as far as being able to watch it online. That was something they put in years ago, but now we're doing that, and we have a date. We're going to be doing it until at least May 10th. Wow, that's a long time. And so these convention centers, I know that they're putting a lot of stuff off until probably mid-May as well. And I think the total was they're losing $80 billion, if I saw that something correct.
Like that, yeah.
Oof, that's insane.
It's hard to even think about where to start. I think there's both the short term shocks that are happening to some sectors, and then the question about long term, what are the impacts going to be, when things do get back to some sense of normalcy. And for 100% certain, the sectors that are most getting hampered right now are hotels and retail. The occupancy rates at hotels are cratering for all the reasons that are very obvious to people right now. No one's doing business travel. There are no conventions. People are not doing discretionary travel. European travelers can't come here now.
Yeah.
So, international travel is not happening. Nothing's open, even like in New York, nothing's open even if you did come here. So
Yeah.
So hotels are taking a big hit. And then again, it wasn't a big surprise, but it was still shocking to see it when the largest mall owner in the country announced in the past 24, 48 hours that they were closing every single one of their properties in the entire country, at least until March, I think at least till the end of the month.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
A lot of their tenants had already decided to close, and then the malls obviously are a place where you're going to have more than 50 people or 10 people or whatever the number is we're not supposed to be in now, in a place at a time. So they had to do it.
Yeah, it's not like they're going to take tickets at the door and make sure that only 10 people are shopping at one time. So,
right.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, again, another thing I hadn't thought about was the malls, because I just really never go to malls to begin with. But you brought up hotels. I can tell you that unfortunately I had to cancel my vacation, which was supposed to happen at the end of March. We were going to be driving down to Texas, and I had set up an Airbnb, or I was going to be renting an Airbnb for some time there as we visited family, and that's not going to happen just because for safety reasons. We really wanted to go visit my wife's grandmother, who's 93, and we thought, we're not going to take any chances, not now, just in case if there's anything that we would possibly be exposed to between now and then. There's no way I'm going to take it down to her. So we made that decision, and so now we were going to rent a minivan as well to take the grandkids and my daughter along and make a family trip of it. So there's two industries right there that I'm affecting by not renting there, and I know that that's happening all across the United States. So that's pretty big.
Yeah, and then so just given that kind of uncertainty, offices and Governor Cuomo today. Yesterday, he had said that, for businesses that were in offices if they were still bringing people in, which most of them, I think aren't anyway, but if they were, they had to drop to 50% of their workforce could only come into the office at a time, and the rest had to work from home. And today he dropped that to only 25% of their workforce can be in the office at any one time right now. So the office buildings are empty, although people are paying their leases, so that's not a financial impact. It's just an activity impact for them.
Yeah.
And then, on the flip side, of course, industrial is insanely busy because of having to be the backbone of the logistics chain in this country. So every grocery stores that have to be restocked way more often, and drugstores that have to be restocked way more often right now, as well as the order fulfillment that Amazon and Walmart are doing, for people who don't even want to go out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think Amazon said that they were looking to hire 100,000 more workers in the middle of this.
Wow. So,
yeah, it gives you a sense. Although how they keep their workforce safe is another question. But
that's I'm trying to figure that out. They're hiring a whole bunch more people. Those people aren't going to be working from home, most likely. If they're talking about order fulfillment places and all that, those people are tightly packed in there a lot of times. So it'll be interesting to see how that's handled. I just don't know how it could be done without having all those people in the same place.
Yeah, Amazon's definitely made a lot of progress in using, I think, some automation in their warehouses and fewer people per square foot. But I don't currently know what that balance looks like right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, the products need to get to the locations. So whether it's a distribution center, whether it's truck drivers driving semi trucks full of grocery goods or whatever other goods need to be delivered, there's going to be, we have to get it to us. There's a lot of places that aren't farming, and I'm assuming New York City is going to be one of those. And I know that's where you're at. You've got a lot of local places we were talking about earlier that people are still having to go out and having to do some shopping, although maybe a little bit more minimalistic on a grander scale, but it still has to be done. So we just need to take all the precautions that the healthcare organizations are telling us to, and just to make sure everybody's safe in that aspect.
Yeah, exactly. So there's it's just the way that everybody in general is talking about this, which is that there's the first is the things we have to do to flatten the curve, and what that means for the day-to-day occupancy of buildings or the day-to-day business at certain kinds of tenants. But then, the second piece of this is what kind of fiscal and monetary policy we're going to see to help us help some of these industries get through. Retail, the largest shopping mall association in the country, as well as the largest hotel association in the country, they've already met with President Trump to make a case for aid for those sectors, or ways to help cover the demand, the astronomical drop in demand that's currently occurring, which I think everybody, or a lot of people, are assuming that once we get through the worst of the pandemic and we can kind of ramp back up, that demand should bounce back rather rapidly. But the question is, so for people that are put out of work for a couple of months, or reduced hours or whatever, it's like, how do you make sure those people aren't ruined, so that when things come back, they can actually go back to spending the money that in retail establishments, or being able to take your trips, those kinds of things. And then for the businesses themselves, what kind of loans, or if not bailouts, at least if they're going to be small business loans or financing to help people kind of just recover from this.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's also the I don't know if you want to call it trickle down or the chain. I guess it's more of a chain, but you think of all those suppliers that supply the larger companies. So just taking Boeing as an example, I know they're hurting badly. Their stock, I think, dropped by 75%. Think about all the small businesses that feed Boeing, whether it's parts or other things. My concern is that, when we talk about bailouts and assistance, that these larger, even the hotel chains, they have suppliers. They have people that they use to supply, whether it's different products within the hotels or whatever. All of them are hurting as well. Is anybody going to bat for them? Because I could see the bailout going to large hotel chains to help them stay afloat, but yet I don't think they're going to be as generous to trickle that down to the suppliers that they have to keep them all in business and them all employed. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, what kind of conditionality they put on it, how much they try to focus what that money goes towards. I mean, there's been a lot of people pointing out that how much money companies have used on stock buybacks for recent years. That if they had just held on to cash, or had done different things with that money, they would be in a better position to ride this out right now. So, why should we just reward them with no strings attached bailouts? And I think that's a valid concern. But yeah, I think making sure that, I don't think we've ever seen the thing that seems very different to me from the financial crisis a decade ago is that was there was financial bubbles. There were things that got way out of control in terms of lack of regulation on Wall Street and bubbles and asset price bubbles and all this financial engineering. And, that created this distortion of the housing market. And then that created all this damage in the real economy that had to be repaired. This is a completely different situation. This is not being created by an overproduction or by oversupply of capital or by a bubble. This is just a unprecedented, drop in demand all at once, because, people are afraid, or people are literally, out of, I mean, like in New York, you shut down every server. So many service workers are out of work now. So
Yeah.
are they going to get unemployment? Are they going to get, how are they going to navigate that? So it's a demand shock. And so what can we do to make, to get demand going again whenever we get through, the immediate healthcare crisis, which is obviously far from over and probably far from having peaked.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I know that there's hopefully light at the end of the tunnel. We've had recent news from China that they haven't had any new cases reported. I don't know how accurate that is, and that they're starting to bring people back from work. And people were talking that this was about a 30-day period that they had to just absolutely kind of almost shut everything down to say, okay, no more. And then we're going to give it this, flatten out the curve, as you said. And now we're going to go ahead and start integrating people back in. That would be great if it was that short a time. I'm not as hopeful that it is that short of a time, but sure would be nice.
Yeah, I think you're just given the nature of the ability to shut things down in the U.S., to put it in more polite terms, I guess.
Yes, yeah. Very political terms, yes.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder to shut everything down. I think it's going to take a little bit longer for things to get control. But yeah, but our company Informa that owns NREI does have offices in China and has conventions in China. And one of the things they are conveying to us is that things are starting to come back to normal there. So that, our offices in China that were all remote work for a while, people are starting to come back in the office.
Oh, good.
And we're starting to talk about events again. So it is happening. Whether, I think we always have questions about the Chinese government telling us the truth on things, but if people are, I think we have examples from businesses that operate in China that can validate that they are starting to get back to some semblancy.
Well, that's good. Again, staying hopeful and hoping for the best for sure. If you had to give advice, and I hate to even, that's a huge ball of wire there that could be unraveled very, very quickly. But if you had advice that you were going to give somebody who is thinking about, okay, what do I do about investing in real estate right now compared to in a month and compared to 6 months? What are your thoughts? Are you hearing anything from folks that are still looking to invest, or are people playing it really safe, close to the chest? What's going on right now?
Yeah. It's amazing how rapidly it's shifted, because even a week ago, people were telling us, oh no, we're still gonna, we're keeping an eye on things, but we're still doing deals. To this week, it's like, no, we're gonna hold off. I think that's probably the best advice, is just to wait for at least a little bit before doing anything. I think, but on the flip side, when things ease up, the capital markets conditions are going to be very favorable.
Yeah.
Interest rates, interest rates are going to be very low. So if the banks are willing to finance deals, the cost of capital is going to be pretty low. So that could, that's going to make it a good time to investing in real estate, because it's always, when there's a nice spread between your cost of capital and your potential returns, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think it's just the question of how deep is the economic hit going to be for the second quarter? How quickly does it bounce back for the third quarter? How does that translate into real estate fundamentals? And then I think all that stuff has to sort itself out before people make any kind of decisions on closing any deals.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, David, anything else for today? Any closing thoughts for today that we need to think about?
I just wanted to point out that at NREI, we have centralized all of our coverage that's related to COVID-19 as one part of our website.
Okay.
Where so every story that we're writing that has that's talking about what people are doing, and we're also trying to it's very serious, but we also we're going to try to do some stories in the next couple of weeks about how people are adapting to working from home in the commercial real estate industry. I mean, this is a business where people are very used to being in conferences together, or pressing the flesh to get deals done. So how are they adapting to doing Zoom meetings with each other? And how are they how's that working for people? So
how's business getting done? Yep.
And we also do have as well this, trying to keep it as updated as possible. We've created a commercial real estate resource center page that has links to what every major commercial real estate association is doing in terms of guidance to their members, best practices for property management for various sectors and how to keep their property safe, updates on their lobbying efforts for helping shape the stimulus packages. So we're trying to make that an up-to-date and good resource for the industry.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I know that I'm going to be planning a trip to the store today for just a couple things and possibly some mints for my dog, because I just can't take that anymore. To
just
you,
got to teach him about social distancing.
Yeah, that would be great. He's an old dog, and that's a new trick, my friend. I don't know if that'll happen. He still thinks he can crawl up on my lap. I'm like, bro, you're huge. Stop. You got to get down. So, but David, to you and your family, please stay safe and wash your hands and all that good stuff. And to all our listeners, I'm sure you have the same message. Anything else for the listeners today, David?
No, but should I dunk this microphone in water too? Is that advisable?
Just once a week.
Yeah.
Just not while it's plugged in, right? All right, David, thank you so much for your time today. And audience, we thank you for listening to the Uncommon Area podcast with David Bodamer. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when David comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts and safer because, it's just a link and you don't have to hand it to him in person. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at NREI, this is Eric Johnson inviting you back in 2 weeks for all the stories that matter to you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Common Area Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of NREI or Informa. The content has been made available for information and educational purposes only.